Daddy. You are the man from Mama's music room. The one who waved his hands and made the music. The word carried across the hushed reception hall with the devastating clarity that only a child's voice possesses. Vera Castillo felt her heart stop. Her legs refused to move. Around her, 300 guests fell into the particular silence that follows unexpected revelation. Her daughter stood before a man in a wheelchair. A man whose face Vera had not seen in 6 years. A man who was now looking at the child before him with an expression of dawning horror that mirrored her own. Vera. His voice reached her before she reached them. Is this my daughter? The question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Vera could not speak. She could not move. She could only watch as her carefully constructed world collapsed in the space of a single heartbeat. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. The Reyes Conservatory had been their beginning. 20 years ago, Vera and Daniel had met in these very halls, young musicians with dreams larger than their experience. He had been studying conducting, she the violin. They had fallen in love over shared practice rooms and late-night conversations about music and meaning and the futures they would build together. Now Vera stood in that same building, watching her past collide with her present in the form of a 6-year-old girl who had somehow recognized a father she had never met. She had almost not come. For 6 weeks, the invitation had sat on her kitchen counter, the elegant calligraphy mocking her with its simple request. A memorial concert for Maestro Alejandro Reyes, the teacher who had shaped both their careers, the man who had married them in this very hall before everything fell apart. Elena had convinced her. Her oldest friend, practical and persistent, had argued that hiding served no one. That Marisol deserved to see where her mother had trained. That ghosts only held power when you refused to face them. Elena had been wrong. Marisol, honey, come here please. Vera finally found her voice. It emerged thin and strained, nothing like the confident tone she used in her teaching studio. But the child did not move. She remained fixed before Daniel's wheelchair, studying him with the intensity she brought to everything. Marisol had her mother's dark hair and stubborn chin, but her eyes were entirely her father's. Grey like storm clouds. Grey like the morning after rain. You have the same ears as me, Marisol observed with the devastating directness of childhood. And your nose is like mine too. Mama said I got those from my daddy. She has your picture in her music room. Daniel looked up from the child. His eyes found Vera across the 15 feet that separated them, and in that gaze she saw everything. Shock. Calculation. The slow, terrible mathematics of dates and timelines resolving into a single inescapable conclusion. She was conceived before I left, he said quietly. Before Vienna. Before you told me not to come back. The words struck like physical blows. Around them, the assembled guests had begun to murmur, that particular rustle of speculation that accompanies scandal in polite society. Vera felt herself becoming the center of a story that would be told and retold in the coming weeks. The violinist and the conductor. The secret child. The dramatic revelation. She could not bear it. Not here, she managed. Somewhere private. Daniel nodded once. His face had settled into the controlled mask she remembered from their worst arguments, the expression he wore when he was processing something too large for immediate response. There is a green room through those doors, he said. If it has not changed. It had not changed. Of course it had not changed. The conservatory preserved its spaces like relics, honoring the traditions that made it significant. When Vera pushed through the heavy oak doors into Maestro Reyes's private sanctuary, she found everything exactly as it had been during her student years. The same photographs lining the walls. The same upright piano in the corner. The same faint scent of wood polish and old paper that had defined her formative years. Behind her, she heard the mechanical whisper of Daniel's wheelchair crossing the threshold. The sound made real what her eyes had struggled to accept. The wheelchair. The silver threading his dark hair. The hearing aids curving behind his ears. The man before her was not the man she had married. Something had happened to him, something significant, and she had known nothing of it. Elena appeared in the doorway, one hand on Marisol's shoulder. The child was looking between the adults with an expression of confusion that Vera knew would require explanation. "Perhaps I could take Marisol to find the refreshment table," Elena offered. "I saw chocolate eclairs earlier." Ordinarily, the promise of chocolate would have distracted Marisol entirely. But the child had inherited her parents' perceptiveness, and she sensed that something important was happening. "Is he really my daddy?" she asked, looking at Vera with those grey eyes that were suddenly an accusation. "The one from the pictures." "Yes," Vera admitted, because lies were no longer possible. "Yes, he is." "Then why does he not live with us?" The question hung in the air. Vera saw Daniel's hands tighten on the arms of his wheelchair, saw the muscle in his jaw clench with the effort of remaining silent. This was her question to answer. Her secret to explain. "That is what your father and I need to discuss right now," Vera said carefully. "Aunt Elena is going to take you to find those eclairs, and then we will all talk together." "I promise." "Do you promise he will still be here when I come back?" Marisol pressed. "Do you promise he will not leave again?" "I am not going anywhere," Daniel said softly. His voice was deeper than Vera remembered, rougher somehow, as if speech had become an effort. "I will be right here when you return." "I promise." Something passed between father and daughter in that moment, some recognition that required no history to validate it. Marisol nodded once, apparently satisfied, and allowed Elena to lead her from the room. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. "How old is she?" Daniel's voice was controlled, but barely. 6. Her birthday is in March. March. The word carried the weight of calculation. "So you were already pregnant when I left for Vienna." "I did not know." "Not then. I found out 3 weeks after you were gone. And you did not think to tell me." The accusation struck precisely where it was aimed. Vera felt her spine stiffen, the old defensiveness rising like a reflex too long practiced to suppress. "I tried," she said. "I wrote to you. Multiple times. Letters to your Vienna address, messages with your management company. I even called the orchestra directly. You never responded. Not once." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. The anger did not disappear, but confusion complicated it. "I never received any communication from you," he said slowly. "Nothing. Not a single letter." "That is impossible." "I sent them myself. Then someone intercepted them. Because I would have returned immediately if I had known. Surely you understand that." Vera stared at him. For 6 years, she had constructed a narrative in which Daniel had received her letters and chosen to ignore them. A narrative in which his silence was confirmation that he had valued his career over their marriage, over her, over any possibility of reconciliation. The certainty of that narrative had sustained her through the pregnancy, the birth, the endless nights of single motherhood. Now he was claiming he had never received them at all. "That is convenient," she said, and heard the bitterness in her own voice. A ready explanation for 6 years of absence. "You think I am lying." "I think I sent multiple letters describing my pregnancy to multiple addresses over a period of months, and not one reached you. I think the simplest explanation is often the correct one." Daniel's hands gripped the wheelchair arms so tightly that his knuckles went white. "The simplest explanation," he said with careful precision, "is not always the correct one. Let me tell you what happened after I arrived in Vienna, Vera. Let me tell you what you apparently never knew." He paused, gathering himself, and Vera saw for the first time how much effort this conversation was costing him. Whatever had happened to him, whatever had put him in that wheelchair, had left marks beyond the physical. 8 months after I arrived, I collapsed during a rehearsal. A rare infection, they called it. Aggressive and fast-moving. It attacked my inner ear first, then spread to my spine. I spent 4 months in a German-speaking hospital where barely anyone spoke English. My personal correspondence was handled by my assistant, a woman named Camille Durand. He spoke the name with a bitterness that surprised Vera. Camille was later discovered to have been selling stories about my condition to tabloids. She was terminated, eventually, but not before significant damage was done. Damage that, I am now beginning to understand, included intercepting any communications you might have sent. Vera felt the floor shift beneath her feet. A hospital. 4 months. An assistant who sold stories and intercepted mail. The narrative she had constructed was developing cracks. You were in a hospital, she repeated slowly. 4 months. During the exact period when I was trying to reach you. During the exact period when our divorce was being finalized. Yes. By the time I was stable enough to be transferred to a facility where I could communicate, the paperwork was complete. I assumed you had moved on. I assumed my silence during the illness had confirmed whatever you already believed about my priorities. And afterward, when you recovered, why did you not contact me then? The question hung between them. Daniel looked away, toward the photographs on the wall. Images of Maestro Reyes with students spanning 5 decades. Images of a world where music was all that mattered, where personal complications were subordinate to the pursuit of beauty. Because I was not the man you married, he said finally. I could no longer conduct. My hearing was permanently damaged. I required a wheelchair for any distance. I spent a year relearning basic functions that I had taken for granted my entire life. He turned back to face her, and something raw moved behind his careful composure. I assumed you were better off without a broken man complicating your life. I told myself my silence was a kindness, that you deserved the chance to build something new without the burden of a disabled ex-husband. I was wrong to assume. I see that now. But at the time, it seemed like the only noble choice available. Noble. Vera heard the word and felt something snap inside her chest. You decided for me what I would want. You decided for me what I could handle. You took away my choice entirely. Yes. Daniel did not flinch from the accusation. I did. And I have regretted it every day since. But Vera, he continued, his voice hardening, you made choices too. You sent, what, 3 letters over a period of weeks. And when they went unanswered, you concluded I did not care. You did not investigate. You did not persist. You built a story in which I was the villain and you were the victim, and you stopped trying. The truth of his words struck deep. Vera wanted to deny it, wanted to insist that she had done everything possible, but the memory rose unbidden. The letters she had written in fury more than hope. The calls she had made with the expectation of rejection. The way she had given up, not because she had exhausted all options, but because giving up was easier than continuing to reach for someone who might not reach back. I was angry, she said, and the admission tasted like ash on her tongue. I was pregnant and alone and terrified, and I was so angry at you for leaving. When you did not respond, it confirmed what I already believed. That your career mattered more than I did. That Vienna mattered more than us. I asked you to come with me. Daniel's voice cracked for the first time. I begged you. We could have faced it together, the pregnancy, the opportunity, all of it. But you refused to even discuss it. You gave me 2 weeks' notice to uproot my entire life. My career, my family, my students. 2 weeks to leave everything I had built. Because the opportunity did not allow for more. Because they had 3 other candidates waiting. Because I believed we could build a new life together in Vienna, that the details would sort themselves out if we faced them together. They stared at each other across the small room, 2 people who had once loved each other enough to marry, who had hurt each other badly enough to divorce, who were now confronting the magnitude of their mutual failures. We both made mistakes, Daniel said finally. We both made assumptions based on incomplete information. We both chose pride over persistence. And now we have a daughter who has spent 6 years without a father, and a father who did not know she existed. That is the consequence we created together, Vera. Not me alone. Not you alone. Both of us. Vera sank onto the small couch against the wall. The fight drained out of her suddenly, replaced by an exhaustion that went deeper than the physical. She knows your face because I showed her, she said quietly. I kept your recordings. All of them. The documentary about the Astoria years, the performance videos, the interviews. I showed them to her because I wanted her to know who her father was. I wanted her to understand that he was brilliant and dedicated and passionate about his work. She looked up at him, and tears she had not felt coming were suddenly blurring her vision. I could not erase you entirely. Even when I was angriest, even when I told myself I hated you. I could not let her grow up thinking her father was worthless. Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. You preserved me for her. Even though you believed I had abandoned you both. I told myself it was for her sake. That she deserved to know the good parts of her father, even if he had failed us. But I think, she paused, struggling with the honesty, I think part of me could not let go either. The admission hung in the air between them. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. A crack in the walls they had both built. A soft knock at the door interrupted the silence. Elena's voice came through the wood. The ceremony is starting in 10 minutes. And Marisol is asking questions I cannot answer. Vera wiped her eyes quickly, composing herself. We should go back. She will be worried. She stood, but Daniel did not move immediately. What happens now? He asked. After tonight. After this. Vera looked at him. At the man she had married and divorced and mourned and apparently never fully understood. At the father of her daughter, diminished by circumstance but not destroyed by it. At the complicated history written in the lines of his face. I do not know, she admitted. I genuinely do not know. But I think we need to figure it out. For Marisol's sake, if nothing else. Daniel nodded slowly. For Marisol's sake. And perhaps for our own as well. He wheeled toward the door, and Vera followed, stepping back into the public space where 300 pairs of eyes waited to catalogue their emergence. The memorial concert passed in a blur. Vera sat with Marisol on one side and Elena on the other, barely registering the performances that honored Maestro Reyes. Her mind was churning through the revelations of the past hour, trying to reconstruct a history she had thought she understood. Daniel sat in the accessible seating at the far end of their row. Marisol kept turning to look at him, small glances that carried enormous weight. Twice, she waved. Both times, he waved back with a solemnity that matched her own. The child had accepted his presence with remarkable ease. Perhaps because she had been prepared for it, in a sense. The photographs, the videos, the stories Vera had told. Daniel had always been real to Marisol, if distant. Now the distance had collapsed, and she seemed to find this more natural than strange. When the concert ended and the audience began to disperse, Marisol pulled at Vera's hand. Can we go talk to Daddy again? I want to ask him about the cat. What cat? Vera asked, confused. He told me he has a cat named Stravinsky. He showed me a picture while you were gone. He is orange and very fluffy, and Daddy says he is bad at catching mice but good at sitting on important papers. Despite everything, Vera felt her lips twitch toward a smile. That sounded exactly like something Daniel would name a cat. We can talk to him for a little while, she agreed. But then we need to get you to bed. It is very late. They made their way through the dispersing crowd to where Daniel waited. He had positioned himself near the exit, away from the main flow of departing guests, and Vera appreciated the consideration. The whispers and stares were already more than she wanted to manage. Marisol approached him without hesitation, climbing onto a nearby chair so she could be closer to his eye level. I like the music, she announced. The man with the cello played very loud during the sad part. Mama says you used to tell the musicians when to play loud and when to play soft. Did you ever make them play that loud? Sometimes, Daniel said, and Vera saw the emotion he was struggling to contain. Sometimes the music needs to be loud so people can feel it properly. Why do you not do that anymore? Is it because of the wheelchair? The question was direct in the way only children can be. Vera opened her mouth to redirect, to soften, but Daniel spoke first. Partly because of the wheelchair, he said honestly, but mostly because of my ears. You noticed my hearing aids earlier. They help me hear, but not the way I used to. Conducting requires being able to hear every small detail of the music. I cannot do that anymore. Marisol considered this with the seriousness she brought to everything. That sounds sad, she concluded. Is it sad? Sometimes. But I have learned to appreciate music in different ways. And I still work with orchestras, just differently now. I write about music and help other people learn to conduct. Like a teacher. Yes, exactly like a teacher. Mama is a teacher. She teaches violin. Sometimes her students play notes wrong and she makes a face like this. Marisol scrunched up her features in an exaggerated grimace, and despite herself, Vera laughed. I do not look like that, she protested. You do, Marisol insisted. You look exactly like that. And then you say something nice so they do not feel bad, but your face already told them. Daniel was smiling now, the first genuine smile Vera had seen from him since the revelation. Your mother always was expressive, he said. When we were students together, I could always tell from across the room whether her practice was going well or poorly. You were students together. Marisol looked between them with new interest. Here. At this school. A long time ago, Vera confirmed. Before you were born. Before many things. Is that how you fell in love? The question landed in the suddenly quiet space between the adults. Marisol looked from one to the other, waiting for an answer with the impatience of a child who does not understand why adults make simple things complicated. Yes, Daniel said quietly. That is how we fell in love. Then why did you stop? For a long moment, no one spoke. Vera felt the weight of her daughter's question pressing against her chest. How did you explain the wreckage of a marriage to a 6-year-old? How did you account for years of separation, for silence and assumption and the slow erosion of connection? Sometimes people who love each other make choices that hurt each other, she said finally. And sometimes those hurts become too heavy to carry together. But stopping loving someone is not the same as stopping caring about them. Do you still care about Daddy? Vera looked at Daniel. At the hope he was trying to hide, the vulnerability beneath his controlled expression. At the man she had loved and lost and apparently never fully released. Yes, she admitted. I still care about your daddy. Marisol nodded, satisfied with this answer. Then you should let him visit us. She said it as if the solution were obvious. Because he cares about you too. I can tell. He looks at you the way you look at ice cream when you say I cannot have any. Elena, who had been standing at a discreet distance, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Even Daniel's composure cracked, a startled smile breaking through his careful expression. We need to get you to bed, Vera said, steering the conversation towards safer waters. Say goodnight to your father. The word came out before she could reconsider it. Father. Not Daniel, not the man, but your father. An acknowledgement she had not planned to make so explicitly. Marisol did not seem to notice the significance. She slid off her chair and approached Daniel's wheelchair, then surprised everyone by reaching out to hug him. Her small arms wrapped around his neck with the unconscious trust of childhood. Good night, Daddy, she said against his shoulder. I am glad you came to the music show. Daniel's arms came up slowly, as if he were afraid she might break. Or perhaps afraid he might break. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion he was not bothering to hide. Good night, sweetheart. I am glad I came too. The embrace lasted only a moment, but Vera knew she would remember it for the rest of her life. Her daughter, whom she had raised alone for 6 years, wrapped in the arms of the father she had thought lost to them. The image contained multitudes. Grief for what had been missed. Hope for what might come. And underneath it all, the beginnings of something that might, given time and care, become healing. They separated on the steps of the conservatory, the spring night cool around them. Daniel would return to his hotel. Vera and Marisol and Elena would drive back to the city where they lived, 3 hours distant. But before they parted, arrangements had to be made. I would like to see her again, Daniel said. As soon as possible. If you will allow it. Vera looked at her daughter, now half asleep against Elena's shoulder, exhausted from the evening's emotional intensity. She has school during the week. But perhaps next weekend. You could come to the city. We could arrange something. Daniel nodded. I will be there. Whatever day works for you, whatever time, I will be there. There was an urgency in his voice that Vera recognized. He had missed 6 years. He would not willingly miss another day. We should exchange numbers, she said, pulling out her phone. So we can coordinate. The mundane act of typing digits into a contact list felt incongruous with the magnitude of what had happened. But perhaps that was how rebuilding worked. Perhaps it happened in small practical steps, phone numbers and scheduling and the ordinary logistics of shared parenthood. I will call tomorrow, Daniel said. To check on her. And to talk more, if you are willing. I am willing. The words felt strange in her mouth, unfamiliar after so many years of building walls. But she meant them. Whatever else she felt about Daniel, whatever complications their history contained, she was willing to try. She carried Marisol to the car, settled her in the booster seat with a blanket from the trunk. The child stirred briefly. "Mama, is Daddy really going to visit?" "He is really going to visit. Next weekend. Promise." "I promise." Marisol settled back against the seat, a small smile curving her lips as she drifted towards sleep. "Good. Because I have a lot of questions. And I want to meet Stravinsky." Elena drove while Vera sat in the back with her sleeping daughter. The highway unspooled before them, dark and empty at this hour, and Vera found herself replaying the evening in her mind. "You okay?" Elena asked quietly, glancing in the rearview mirror. "I do not know what I am." Vera's voice was hushed to avoid waking Marisol. "Everything I believed about what happened between us, everything I told myself for 6 years. It might all be wrong. Or it might be partly wrong and partly right." Elena was always practical. "He left, Vera. Even if he did not receive your letters, even if the hospital explained some of the silence, he still chose Vienna over you in the first place." "I know. But I also chose not to go with him. I also chose to stop trying to reach him. I also chose to build a story where I was entirely the victim and he was entirely the villain. And now I do not know what story we are in." She looked down at Marisol's sleeping face, so innocent of the complications the adults had created. "I only know she deserves the chance to know her father. Whatever happened between us, she did not choose it. She should not have to pay for our failures." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, she said, "You are a good mother, Vera. Whatever else is true, that is true." The first video call happened the next evening. Marisol had been vibrating with anticipation all day, asking repeatedly when Daddy would call, what they would talk about, whether she should show him her violin. When Daniel's face appeared on the tablet screen, Marisol seized the device with a proprietary air that made Vera simultaneously amused and aching. "Daddy, look at my room." Marisol began an immediate tour, the camera lurching wildly as she moved. "This is my bed and this is my bookshelf and this is where my stuffed animals live. That one is called Professor Whiskers and that one is called Senor Flops and that one does not have a name yet because I cannot decide." Daniel's voice came through the speakers, slightly tinny but warm with evident delight. "What are the options for the unnamed one?" Marisol held up the stuffed elephant for closer inspection. "I am thinking either trumpet because of the nose or stompy because elephants are loud walkers. Both excellent choices. I think you should wait until you know the elephant's personality better before you decide." "That is what Mama said too. Your mother is wise about many things." Marisol plopped down on her bed, propping the tablet against her pillow so Daniel could see her without the nausea-inducing camera work. "Mama says you are coming to visit next weekend. Is that true?" "It is true. I will arrive on Friday evening. Will you stay at our house?" "I will stay at a hotel nearby. But I will spend as much time as possible with you and your mother, if that is okay." "Why can you not stay here?" "We have a guest room. Mama never uses it except when Abuela visits." Vera stepped into frame, her hand coming to rest on Marisol's shoulder. "Because your father and I are still figuring out how things will work," she explained. "Staying at a hotel is more appropriate for now." "Appropriate." Marisol tested the word. "That is what grown-ups say when they have reasons they do not want to explain." Daniel laughed, a genuine sound that carried through the tiny speakers. "She is perceptive," he said to Vera. "I wonder where she gets that." "From both of you," Elena called from the kitchen, where she was ostensibly not eavesdropping. "Neither of you ever missed anything." The call continued for another half hour. Marisol showed Daniel her violin, played a halting but recognizable version of a simple melody, and accepted his praise with the gravity of an artist receiving critical acclaim. She asked about Stravinsky the cat, about Daniel's apartment, about whether he had ever conducted a concert with cannons because she had heard there was a piece that had cannons. By the time Vera finally declared it bedtime, Marisol was yawning despite her protests that she was not even a little bit tired. "Say goodnight to your father," Vera instructed. "Good night, Daddy." Marisol pressed close to the screen as if proximity could substitute for physical presence. "I will see you on Friday." "Good night, sweetheart. Sleep well." After Marisol was tucked into bed, Vera returned to the tablet, which she had left propped on the kitchen counter. Daniel's face was still on the screen, waiting. "She is remarkable," he said. "Smart, curious, unafraid to speak her mind. She gets that from both of us too. Vera sat down across from the device, suddenly exhausted by the emotional effort of the day. She asked me yesterday if you would like her. As if it were possible not to. I already love her. Daniel's voice was quiet but certain. I know that sounds impossible after one day. But it is true. I look at her and I see everything I have missed and everything I hope to still have, and I love her completely. Vera blinked against the unexpected sting of tears. She has been waiting for you. Whether she knew it or not. All those videos I showed her, all the stories I told. She was building a space for you in her life, and now you are here to fill it. I intend to fill it as fully as she will allow. Daniel paused. And you, Vera? How are you doing with all this? Honestly. She considered the question. Honestly, she said finally, I am struggling. Everything I believed for 6 years is being dismantled. The villain of my story turns out to have been in a hospital bed while I was cursing his name. The silence I attributed to cruelty was actually caused by circumstance and cowardice and a woman who saw opportunity in another person's suffering. And your own choices, Daniel said carefully. Have you been examining those as well? Yes. Vera did not flinch from it. I gave up too easily. I told myself I had tried everything, but 3 letters and 2 phone calls over a few months is not everything. It is the minimum dressed up as the maximum. I was angry and hurt and I wanted you to come crawling back, and when you did not, I decided you never cared at all. The honesty hung between them, painful but necessary. We both failed each other, Daniel said. We both made assumptions instead of seeking truth. We both prioritized our pride over our partnership. And as a result, we both lost years we can never recover. And Marisol lost the most. Vera's voice caught. She grew up without a father because of our failures. Then let us make sure she grows up with one from now on. Daniel leaned closer to the camera. Whatever happens between us, Vera, whatever we figure out or fail to figure out about our own relationship, I want to be present for her. Consistently, reliably, permanently present. I want that too. And Vera realized as she said it that it was true. Whatever her complicated feelings about Daniel, she wanted her daughter to have a father. I will not stand in the way of that. Thank you. The words carried genuine gratitude. I know you could make this difficult if you chose to. I know the law would favor you in almost every way. I am not interested in making it difficult. I am interested in doing what is best for Marisol. And I am beginning to believe that includes having you in her life. The call ended with plans confirmed for the coming weekend. Daniel would arrive Friday evening and stay through Sunday afternoon. They would take things slowly, focus on Marisol, let the child set the pace for how quickly the relationship developed. After the screen went dark, Vera sat alone in her kitchen, surrounded by the quiet evidence of the life she had built. Marisol's artwork on the refrigerator. Violin music spread across the counter. A calendar crowded with lessons and school events and the 1,000 small appointments that comprised single motherhood. Into that life, Daniel would now be woven. A complication she had not anticipated. A presence she had long ago resigned herself to lacking. A second chance neither of them deserved, but both of them apparently needed. She did not know if she could forgive him. She did not know if she could forgive herself. But for Marisol's sake, she would try. Friday arrived with the particular tension of anticipated upheaval. Vera had cleaned the apartment twice, rearranged the furniture in the living room to accommodate Daniel's wheelchair, and researched nearby restaurants with accessible seating. Her preparation felt excessive even as she could not stop herself from continuing it. Marisol had been asking about her father's arrival every hour since breakfast. Her excitement was incandescent, filling every corner of their small home, and Vera found herself alternating between sharing that joy and dreading its potential disappointment. What if the reality of Daniel could not match the image Marisol had constructed? What if the weekend went badly? What if all this hope ended in another kind of loss? At 6 o'clock precisely, the doorbell rang. He is here, he is here, he is here. Marisol was at the door before Vera could move, struggling with a lock she could not yet reach. Vera unlocked it for her and stepped back as the door swung open to reveal Daniel in his wheelchair, dressed casually, a small gift bag balanced on his lap. Daddy. Marisol's greeting was half shriek, half laugh. You came. You really came. I promised, Daniel said, and his voice held a tenderness that Vera remembered from another life. "I always keep my promises." Marisol threw herself at him with the abandon of a child who has not yet learned to fear rejection. Daniel caught her, lifting her onto his lap with an ease that suggested practice. "You got taller since Monday," he observed seriously. "It has only been 5 days. 5 days is a long time when you are 6. All kinds of growing can happen." Vera watched this exchange from the doorway, feeling oddly peripheral to a connection that had formed so quickly. She had expected awkwardness, hesitation, the careful negotiation of strangers learning each other. Instead, she saw a father and daughter who seemed to have decided, without consulting her, that they had already known each other for years. "Come in," she said finally. "I will make some tea." The weekend unfolded in a series of moments that rearranged Vera's understanding of what their life could contain. Saturday morning, Daniel helped Marisol with her violin practice. His hearing loss made detailed correction difficult, but he understood music at a level that transcended technical specificity. He spoke to her about expression, about the story she was trying to tell with each phrase, about the breathing of a melody as if it were a living thing. Marisol listened with an attention Vera rarely saw in her lessons. This was not student and teacher. This was something else, something that required a different vocabulary. Saturday afternoon, they went to the park near Vera's apartment. Daniel navigated the paths in his wheelchair while Marisol ran ahead and doubled back, an orbit of energy around his slower progression. She asked about his chair, about how fast it could go, about whether she could ride on his lap down the hill. Vera watched them together and felt something shift in her chest. Not the sharp pain of regret she had expected, but something softer. Something like hope. That evening, they had dinner together at a restaurant Marisol chose, one with a children's menu and a basket of crayons on every table. Marisol drew pictures while the adults talked, and gradually the conversation moved beyond logistics into something more personal. "Tell me about your work," Daniel said. "Your teaching, your students. What have the past 6 years been like?" Vera found herself answering honestly, without the protective distance she usually maintained. She told him about the studio she had built, the young violinist she was nurturing, the satisfaction of watching a student suddenly understand something that had eluded them. She told him about the loneliness of single motherhood, the exhaustion, the way she sometimes forgot she had ever been anything other than Marisol's mother. Daniel listened with an attention that was itself a kind of intimacy. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You have built a beautiful life," he said finally. "I am sorry I was not part of it." "You are part of it now." The words surprised Vera even as she spoke them. "If you want to be." "I want nothing more." Sunday brought the hardest part, the leaving. Marisol, who had been joyful all weekend, became increasingly subdued as the afternoon progressed. By the time Daniel began gathering his things to return to the hotel before his evening flight, she was clinging to his wheelchair as if physical proximity could prevent departure. "Do you have to go?" Her voice was small. "Can you not stay here?" "I have to go for now," Daniel said gently. "But I will be back. Next weekend, and the weekend after that, and as many weekends as it takes." "As many weekends as it takes for what?" Daniel looked at Vera over their daughter's head. "For this to feel normal," he said. "For you to know without any doubt that I will always come back. Promise." "I promise." The goodbye at the door was longer than it should have been. Marisol hugged Daniel 3 times, each farewell seemingly final until it was not. When she finally released him and retreated to the living room to watch through the window, Vera found herself alone with Daniel in the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for this weekend. For giving me the chance to know her. Thank you for coming." Vera was surprised to find that she meant it. "She has been different since she met you. Happier, somehow. More complete. And you?" Daniel's gaze was searching. "How are you feeling about all of this?" Vera considered the question. "Confused," she admitted. "Hopeful. Terrified of getting this wrong." "We will get some things wrong," Daniel said. "That is inevitable. But we can also get things right. We can choose differently than we chose before." He reached out, and Vera did not pull back as his hand found hers. "I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give," he continued. "But I want you to know that my feelings have not changed. Not really. I loved you when I left for Vienna. I loved you when I lay in that hospital bed wondering if I would ever walk again. I loved you through every year of silence when I told myself I was protecting you by staying away. Daniel. I am not asking you to love me back. I am not asking for reconciliation or forgiveness or anything you cannot freely offer. I am only telling you the truth because I am done with the consequences of hiding it. Vera looked at their joined hands, at the physical connection neither of them had sought but neither was severing. I do not know what I feel, she said honestly. Too much has changed too quickly. I need time. Take all the time you need. I will be here. He released her hand, wheeled himself toward the elevator, looked back once before the doors closed. And Vera stood in the empty hallway, feeling the after-image of his touch on her palm. That night, after Marisol was asleep, Vera sat in her music room. The room where she had kept Daniel's photographs, where she had shown Marisol the recordings of her father, where she had preserved a man she told herself she had stopped loving. She looked at the photographs now with new eyes. Daniel in his conductor's tails, arms raised mid-gesture. Daniel at their wedding, young and whole and radiating joy. Daniel in a candid shot she had taken during a vacation, laughing at something off camera. She had told herself she kept these for Marisol. But sitting here now, surrounded by images of a past she could not release, she wondered if that had ever been the whole truth. The video calls continued through the week. The visits continued through the weekends. Slowly, incrementally, a new pattern established itself. Daniel became a presence in their lives, not constant but consistent, always arriving when he said he would, always departing with promises to return. 3 months passed. Then 6. Marisol's relationship with her father deepened into something that no longer required facilitation. They had jokes Vera did not understand, references to conversations she had not witnessed. Daniel had become someone separate from her, a figure in Marisol's life who existed independently of their shared history. And Vera found, to her surprise, that this did not threaten her. It completed something instead. The family she had tried to build alone was now larger, more complex, more real. One evening, after Marisol was asleep and Daniel was still in the living room finishing his tea before driving back to his hotel, he said something that changed everything. I have been offered a position, he said. A permanent position with a music foundation based in this city. It would mean relocating here. Being close enough to see Marisol regularly instead of just on weekends. Vera set down her own cup of tea. You would move here. Leave your apartment, your medical team, your entire established life. I would leave all of it, Daniel confirmed. Without hesitation. Being close to her, and to you, matters more than any of it. And your health. You have specialists in your current city. Doctors who know your history. There are good doctors here too. I have already researched it. The transition would not be simple, but it would be manageable. Vera stared at him. In the months since the memorial concert, she had watched Daniel prove himself again and again. He showed up when he said he would. He listened when Marisol spoke. He respected boundaries Vera set and pushed gently at the ones she seemed uncertain about. He had been patient and present and persistently kind. Now he was offering to upend his entire life to be closer. Why? She asked. Why would you sacrifice so much? Because I already missed 6 years, he said simply. And because I do not want to miss any more. The following weeks were consumed by logistics. Daniel found an accessible apartment 15 minutes from Vera's home. He coordinated with moving companies and medical practices and the 1,000 details that relocation required. Marisol helped choose the color for her bedroom in his new place. A shade of blue she insisted was exactly like the ocean even though she had only seen the ocean once. Through it all, Vera watched. She watched Daniel struggle with the physical challenges of moving. She watched him prioritize Marisol's needs over his own comfort. She watched him build a new life piece by piece, oriented entirely around the family he had discovered. And she watched something shift within herself. The walls she had built were not collapsing, exactly. But doors were appearing in them. Windows. Points of access she had not known existed. On the day Daniel moved into his new apartment, Vera and Marisol arrived with housewarming gifts. A plant for his windowsill. A framed photograph of Marisol at her school recital. A bottle of wine he probably should not drink with his medications but which seemed symbolically appropriate nonetheless. Welcome home, Vera said as she handed him the gifts. Daniel looked around the apartment, still crowded with boxes, still more potential than reality. Then he looked at Marisol, who was already exploring the kitchen, opening cabinets with proprietary interest. Then he looked at Vera. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me get here." "You got yourself here," Vera replied. "I just stopped standing in the way." "That is not nothing." "No." She met his gaze steadily. "I suppose it is not." The new routine established itself with surprising ease. Daniel picked Marisol up from school twice a week. Dinners together happened more nights than not. Weekend handoffs dissolved into something more fluid, more organic, less defined by schedule and more by circumstance. Marisol thrived. Her teacher reported improved focus at school. Her violin playing advanced more quickly. She smiled more, laughed more, seemed to occupy her own small body with greater ease. And Vera found that she was changing too. The defensive vigilance she had maintained for years was softening. The certainty that she had to manage everything alone was giving way to something more collaborative. She was learning to share parenthood, and discovering that sharing made the weight lighter rather than heavier. One evening, after Marisol was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Daniel said something that stopped Vera's breath. "I had a medical appointment today," he said. "A follow-up with my new specialist here." Vera felt alarm prickle along her spine. "Is everything okay?" "Mostly." He paused. "There are some complications from the original infection. Things that may cause problems down the road." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that might shorten the road considerably." Daniel's voice was steady, but Vera could hear the effort it cost him. "I wanted you to know because you should be able to make informed decisions about how involved you want to become." Vera sat very still. The words processed slowly, each one carrying weight she was not sure she could lift. "You are telling me you might be dying," she said finally. "I am telling you that my prognosis is uncertain. That the years ahead are not guaranteed. That anyone who invests in me emotionally should understand the risk. And you are telling me this now, after you have already moved here. After Marisol has already attached to you so completely. I am telling you now because you asked me once for honesty. Because the alternative is letting you discover it later and feeling betrayed." Vera stood abruptly, moved to the window, stared out at the city lights without seeing them. "She is going to love you," she said. "She already loves you. And now you are telling me she might lose you. She might lose me regardless. No one's future is certain. The question is whether the time we have together is worth the pain of its potential ending." Vera turned to face him. "And what do you think?" she demanded. "Is it worth it?" Daniel met her gaze without flinching. "Every moment with her is worth it," he said. "Every morning I wake up knowing I will see her face. Every meal we share. Every stumbling violin practice, every drawing she presents with such pride, every question she asks that I cannot answer. Yes. It is worth whatever comes after." Vera felt tears she had not expected burning in her eyes. "And what about us?" she asked. "What about whatever this is that we have been building?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. "I will not ask you to invest in something that might end badly," he said finally. "I will understand if you choose to protect yourself. And if I do not want to protect myself." The question hung in the air between them. Vera did not know where it had come from, only that it was true. The walls were still there, but the doors were open now, and something was moving through them. "Then I would ask you to be patient with me," Daniel said. "To let me prove that the time we have, however long it is, can be good. Can be worth whatever price we pay for it." Vera crossed the room. She sat on the couch beside his wheelchair, closer than she had been since before Vienna, since before everything fell apart. "I am tired of protecting myself," she said quietly. "I have been doing it for 6 years and it has cost me more than it saved me. Vera, I am not saying I forgive you. Not completely. I am not saying I trust you. Not yet. But I am saying that I want to try. That I want to see if we can build something from all this wreckage." Daniel's hand found hers. His fingers were warm, slightly trembling, alive in a way she had forgotten hands could be. "We will get it wrong sometimes," he said. "Both of us. We are too stubborn, too wounded, too shaped by our failures for it to be otherwise. Probably. But we can keep trying," he continued. "Every day, we can choose to try again. And maybe that is enough." Maybe that is all any of us can offer. Vera looked at their joined hands. At the evidence of connection she had denied for so long. At the risk she was choosing to take. Maybe it is, she said. And for the first time in 6 years, she allowed herself to believe that the future might contain something other than the past. The months that followed were not easy. There were arguments, misunderstandings, moments when old wounds reopened and bled fresh pain. Daniel's health fluctuated. Marisol had developmental challenges that required patience neither parent always possessed. The logistics of co-parenting, of sharing a child between two homes, proved more complicated than any of them had anticipated. But there was also joy. There were Sunday mornings when all three of them ate breakfast together, Marisol chattering about her dreams while Daniel read the paper and Vera made pancakes that were always slightly burned on one side. There were afternoon trips to the park, to the museum, to the ice cream shop on the corner that Marisol had designated as the best in the world. There were quiet evenings when Marisol was asleep and the adults could speak honestly about their fears and hopes. One year after the memorial concert, Marisol had her first solo performance at her school's spring recital. She played a piece that was technically beyond her level, one she had been practicing for months with the dogged determination she had inherited from both parents. Daniel sat in the front row, wheelchair positioned at the aisle end. Vera sat beside him. When Marisol walked onto the stage, her small violin held with careful precision, she looked for them immediately. Her face lit when she found them, and she gave a small wave before remembering she was supposed to be professional. She played beautifully. Not perfectly, there were small errors, moments of hesitation, but beautifully nonetheless. When she finished, the audience applauded, and Vera saw Daniel wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "She is extraordinary," he said. "She is," Vera agreed. After the recital, after the congratulations and the photographs and the obligatory ice cream celebration, they walked home together through the spring evening. Marisol skipped ahead, then circled back, her energy seemingly inexhaustible. "Mama," she called from up the sidewalk. "Do you think I could be a professional violinist someday like you?" "If that is what you want," Vera replied. "And if you are willing to work very hard. I want to be a violinist and a conductor and maybe also a veterinarian." "That is a lot of careers," Daniel observed. "I am a lot of person," Marisol said with perfect confidence. Daniel laughed, that genuine sound that still startled Vera with its warmth. "Yes," he said. "You certainly are." They reached Vera's building. The question of where Daniel would go, to his own apartment or into hers, no longer required explicit discussion. Most evenings now, he came upstairs. Most evenings, he stayed until Marisol was asleep, and sometimes longer. "I'm going to put my violin away," Marisol announced. "And then can we have hot chocolate? Because I performed and I deserve a reward." "You do deserve a reward," Vera agreed. "We will make hot chocolate." Marisol disappeared into the apartment, and for a moment, Daniel and Vera stood alone in the hallway. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for letting me be here for this. For all of this. Thank you for coming back." Vera looked at him. At the man in the wheelchair who had once been her husband, who was now something else, something she did not have a name for. "For not giving up." "I almost did." Daniel's voice was quiet. "After the accident, after I realized what I had lost, I almost gave up entirely. I thought there was no point in continuing." "What changed your mind?" Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I kept hearing music. Even with my damaged hearing, even when everything was taken from me, I could still hear music in my head. And I thought, if I can still hear beauty, then maybe beauty is still possible. Even for someone like me." Vera felt her throat tighten. "Marisol plays music," she said. "Sometimes when she is practicing, I close my eyes and I hear something beyond the notes. Something that is just her, expressing herself in the only way that makes sense. That is what music is," Daniel said. "Truth made audible. Our daughter is learning to tell the truth in a language most people never master. Our daughter." Vera let the words settle. They still surprised her sometimes, even after a year. This sharing of a child, a future, a life. "Let us go inside," she said. "Before the hot chocolate gets made without us and involves too much whipped cream." Daniel wheeled through the door she held open. The apartment was warm and bright, Marisol already clattering in the kitchen with more enthusiasm than skill. and Vera followed, closing the door behind her on the hallway's silence. Inside, her family was waiting. The word had changed meaning over the past year. Family was no longer just her and Marisol, their small unit against the world. Family now included Daniel, with his wheelchair and his hearing aids and his uncertain prognosis. Family included Elena, who still came for Sunday dinners, offering sarcastic commentary and unstinting support. Family included Stravinsky the cat, who had moved into Daniel's new apartment and occasionally visited Vera's when Marisol insisted. It was not the family Vera had imagined when she was young. It was not the family she had planned for, prepared for, expected to have. But it was hers. And tonight, watching Daniel attempt to operate the espresso machine while Marisol explained the precise ratio of chocolate to milk, Vera realized that she would not trade it for anything. Not even for the years she had lost. Because those years had led here. Every choice, every mistake, every moment of silence and assumption had brought them to this kitchen, this evening, this imperfect, beautiful life. "Mama," Marisol called. "Daddy is doing it wrong. Come help." Vera moved to join them. And outside the window, the city glittered with 10,000 lights, each one a window into someone else's story. This was hers. The call came at 3 in the morning. Vera had been dreaming about music, about a concert hall filled with people she could not quite see, when her phone shattered the silence. She fumbled for it in the darkness, her heart already racing before she registered the unfamiliar number. "Is this Vera Castillo?" The voice was professional, controlled. "This is Memorial Hospital. You are listed as the emergency contact for Daniel Mercer." The words that followed blurred together. Collapse. Ambulance. Infection. Complications. Stable but critical. Words that meant nothing and everything. Words that rewrote the night into something unrecognizable. "I will be there in 20 minutes, Vera said, already out of bed, already reaching for clothes. She called Elena from the car, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need you to come stay with Marisol. Daniel is in the hospital." Elena did not ask questions. She said only, "I am on my way." Vera drove through empty streets, the city strange and unfamiliar at this hour. She had driven this route 100 times, to Daniel's apartment, to the park, to the restaurants where they had slowly rebuilt something from wreckage. Now the familiar landmarks seemed alien, transformed by fear into a landscape she did not recognize. The hospital was bright and harsh after the darkness outside. Vera gave Daniel's name at the reception desk and was directed to a waiting room on the 4th floor, where she sat alone among plastic chairs and outdated magazines. Time passed strangely. Minutes stretched into hours. A doctor appeared, spoke words that Vera tried to hold in her mind. The original infection had left damage that was now causing complications. His body was fighting, but the outcome was uncertain. They were doing everything they could. "Can I see him?" Vera asked. "Not yet. We will let you know when he is stable enough for visitors." She sat back down. She waited. At some point, her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Marisol is still asleep. I will handle the morning. Stay as long as you need." Vera typed back a thank you that felt inadequate, then returned to the particular purgatory of the waiting room. Dawn came through the windows, pale and tentative. A nurse appeared and said Vera could see him now, briefly, if she was prepared. She was not prepared. Nothing could have prepared her for Daniel in that hospital bed, diminished in a way even the wheelchair had not accomplished. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical indifference. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, his eyes closed. Vera pulled a chair close to his bed and took his hand. It was warm, still alive, still connected to the man she had been slowly allowing herself to love again. "I am here," she said quietly. "I am not going anywhere." She did not know if he could hear her. She said it anyway. The hours that followed blurred into a pattern of waiting and hoping and small updates from medical staff. Marisol called at 8, her voice small and frightened. "Mama, where are you? Aunt Elena says you had to go somewhere important." Vera closed her eyes, gathering herself. "Daddy is in the hospital, sweetheart. He got sick, but the doctors are taking care of him. Sick like when I had the flu. Or sick like something else. Something else. Something more serious. But he is strong, and he is fighting. Can I come see him?" "Not yet." But soon, I hope. Can you be brave for me today? Can you go to school with Aunt Elena and let me stay here with Daddy? There was a pause. Then Marisol said, "Tell him I love him. Tell him he promised to always come back." "I will tell him," Vera said, and her voice broke on the words. "I promise." She returned to Daniel's room after the call. He had not moved, had not changed, but the machines continued their steady rhythm, and Vera chose to find hope in that constancy. "You promised her," she said, taking his hand again. "You promised you would always come back. And I know you do not break your promises. So you need to fight. You need to come back to her. To us." The machines beeped. Daniel's chest rose and fell. And Vera held on. By afternoon, there was improvement. The doctor used words like responding and stabilizing and cautiously optimistic. Daniel's eyes opened briefly, found Vera's face, and something like recognition moved through them before they closed again. He woke fully the following morning. Vera had dozed in the chair beside his bed, her neck aching and her back protesting, when his voice reached her. "You look terrible." She startled awake to find him watching her, his expression weak but unmistakably present. "You are one to talk," she replied, and the relief in her voice came out as something close to laughter. "You scared me. You scared all of us. I scared myself." Daniel's voice was rough, diminished. "What happened?" "Your body decided to remind you that it has opinions about being ignored. The infection from years ago left damage that flared up. You collapsed at your apartment. Your neighbor found you and called an ambulance." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "I remember feeling strange. Then nothing until now. It has been 36 hours. Marisol has called approximately 400 times. She made Aunt Elena drive her past the hospital last night so she could, and I quote, send healing thoughts through the walls. That sounds like her. She made you a card." Vera reached into her bag and produced a folded piece of construction paper. "It has glitter on it. I am supposed to warn you about the glitter." Daniel took the card with hands that trembled slightly. He opened it to reveal a drawing of 3 figures, 2 large and 1 small, standing before a house with a disproportionately large sun overhead. The word family was written across the top in uneven letters. Glitter decorated every available surface. "She is remarkable," he said softly. "She is." Vera paused. "She asked me to tell you that you promised to always come back. And that you are not allowed to break promises." Daniel looked at her over the card's edge. "I intend to keep that promise," he said. "However much time I have, I intend to spend it coming back to her. To you." The words hung in the air between them. Vera felt the weight of the past 36 hours pressing on her chest, all the fear and waiting and desperate hoping condensed into this moment. "I thought I might lose you," she admitted. Before I had the chance to, she stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. "The chance to what?" "To tell you that I forgive you." Vera met his gaze directly. "Completely. Not just for Marisol's sake, but for my own. I forgive you for leaving, for the silence, for all of it. And I need you to forgive me too. For giving up, for the assumptions, for the years I kept her from you." Daniel's eyes glistened. "There is nothing to forgive on your side. You were protecting yourself and our daughter. You did what you thought was right. I did what was easy. What let me stay angry instead of staying hopeful." Vera shook her head. "That was not protection. That was cowardice. And it cost all of us. Then we are both forgiven." Daniel reached for her hand, and she gave it. "We are both released from debts we have been carrying too long." Vera felt something loosen in her chest. Some knot she had been holding for 6 years finally coming undone. "Rest," she said. "I will be here when you wake up. Promise." "I promise." She meant it. Marisol's first hospital visit happened 2 days later, when Daniel had been moved from intensive care to a regular room and the doctors were speaking in terms of recovery rather than crisis. Elena drove her, and Vera met them in the lobby to prepare her for what she would see. "Daddy has lots of tubes and wires attached to him," Vera explained, kneeling to Marisol's level. "They look scary, but they are helping him get better. And he might seem tired, because his body is working very hard to heal. Will he still look like Daddy? He will still look like Daddy. Just a little more tired than usual." Marisol nodded solemnly, absorbing this information. Then she reached into her backpack and produced a stuffed elephant. "I brought Stompy," she announced. "I decided that was his name. And I thought Daddy might want to borrow him while he is sick. For comfort." "That is very thoughtful," Vera said, her throat tight. "I am sure Daddy will appreciate it." They took the elevator to the 4th floor. Marisol held Vera's hand tightly, her small fingers gripping with more force than usual. When they reached Daniel's room, she paused at the doorway, taking in the machines and monitors and the bed where her father lay. "Hi, Daddy," she said, her voice smaller than Vera had ever heard it. Daniel turned his head toward her, and his face transformed with a smile that seemed to cost him considerable effort. "Hi, sweetheart. Come here. I have been waiting to see you." Marisol approached the bed slowly, her eyes tracking the various tubes and wires with careful attention. "That one is for medicine," Daniel explained, following her gaze. "And that one helps the doctors know how my heart is doing. And that one," he pointed to the 4, "is giving me fluids because I have not been eating very well." "Why not?" "Because when your body is busy fighting sickness, it forgets to be hungry. But I am getting better now. The doctors say I can probably go home in a few days." "Home to your apartment?" "Yes, home to my apartment. And then, when I am stronger, back to our regular visits and dinners and violin practices." Marisol considered this. Then she held out the stuffed elephant. "I brought Stompy for you," she said. "So you would not be lonely." Daniel took the elephant with hands that trembled slightly. His eyes were bright with tears he was not bothering to hide. "Thank you," he said. "This is the best medicine anyone has given me." Marisol climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed, settling herself beside her father with the particular confidence of a child who has decided something matters too much for hesitation. "I was scared," she admitted quietly, "when Mama said you were sick. I thought maybe you would go away again. Like before I knew you." Daniel put his arm around her, drawing her close despite the awkward positioning of the medical equipment. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I promised you, remember. And I do not break my promises." Mama said the same thing. Marisol looked between her parents. "She said you promised to always come back and that you are not allowed to break promises." "Your mother is right. She also said you are very stubborn and that is why you are still here." Daniel laughed, a weak sound but genuine. "That is also right. Stubbornness has its uses." They stayed for an hour, Marisol chattering about school and her violin practice and the card she had made, Daniel listening with the focused attention he always gave her. When the visit ended and Elena took Marisol home, Vera remained behind. "She was so worried," she told Daniel. "The past few days have been difficult for her. She does not show it the way other children might, but I could see it. She is resilient. Like her mother." Vera shook her head. "She should not have to be resilient about this. She should not have to worry about losing a father she only just found. None of us should have to face loss." Daniel's voice was tired but steady. "But we do. All of us. The question is not whether we will lose things, but how we will live in the meantime." Vera looked at him, at the man in the hospital bed surrounded by machines that were keeping him alive. She thought about the years they had lost, the misunderstandings, the silence. She thought about the year they had found, the slow rebuilding, the family taking shape from wreckage. "I want to live well," she said. "Whatever time we have. I want to live it well." "So do I." Daniel reached for her hand. "So let us make that choice. Every day. Together." Daniel came home from the hospital a week later, thinner and weaker but alive. Vera had prepared his apartment for his return, stocking the refrigerator, ensuring everything was accessible, coordinating with a home health aide who would check on him daily. But it was Marisol who took charge of his recovery with the determination of a small general commanding an army. "You need to drink water," she instructed, presenting him with a glass. "The doctor said hydration is important." "Yes, Commander," Daniel replied with appropriate solemnity. "And you need to do your exercises. The physical therapy lady showed Mama and me what you are supposed to do. We are going to make sure you do them. I appreciate the supervision." Marisol nodded, satisfied with his compliance. "And when you are feeling better, we are going to have a celebration. Because you came back like you promised." What kind of celebration? The best kind. With cake and music and probably also ice cream because I will ask Mama and she will say yes because she is very happy you are not dead. Vera, listening from the kitchen, felt her face flush. Marisol, she called. Maybe we do not need to discuss the details of my emotional state quite so publicly. Marisol looked confused. But you are happy. You told Aunt Elena on the phone that you were so relieved you could not stop crying. That sounds like very happy to me. Daniel was grinning despite his exhaustion. Is that so? Children have exceptional hearing, Vera said dryly, returning to the living room. And apparently no sense of conversational boundaries. I think it is wonderful, Daniel said. I am glad to know my survival provoked such strong emotions. Do not let it go to your head. Too late. The following weeks were a slow process of recovery. Daniel's strength returned incrementally, each day bringing small improvements that accumulated into larger progress. The home health aide was replaced by physical therapy visits, then by exercises Daniel could do independently. The pallor faded from his face. The tremor in his hands steadied. And through it all, Vera was there. Not constantly, not intrusively, but consistently. She came by in the mornings to check on him before work. She brought Marisol for afternoon visits that stretched into dinners. She stayed some nights, sleeping on his couch so she could be nearby if anything went wrong. It was during one of these nights, a month after Daniel's hospital discharge, that he told her about the investigation. I have been looking into what happened, he said. Years ago. The intercepted communications. Vera looked up from the book she had been reading. What do you mean? I mean I hired someone to investigate. A researcher who specializes in tracking down historical records. I wanted to know the truth about what Camille did. The full truth. Vera set down her book. She had thought about Camille Durand occasionally over the past year, the assistant whose betrayal had cost them so much. But she had not imagined there was more to discover. What did you find? Daniel reached for a folder on the table beside him. It was thick with documents, papers covered in text and photographs and what appeared to be official correspondence. Everything, he said. I found everything. The story that emerged from those documents was worse than Vera had imagined. Camille Durand had been Daniel's assistant for 3 years before the Vienna appointment. She had managed his correspondence, his schedule, his professional life. She had also, according to the investigation, harbored feelings for him that he had never reciprocated and apparently never noticed. When Daniel fell ill, Camille saw opportunity. She controlled all access to him during his hospitalization, presenting herself to the medical staff as a devoted colleague, the only point of contact for a man whose family had apparently abandoned him. She intercepted not only Vera's letters but communications from Daniel's brother, his parents, his friends. She created a narrative of isolation that served her own purposes. The tabloid stories had been her secondary income. She sold details of Daniel's condition to gossip outlets, earning money from his suffering while maintaining her position as his sole support. When Daniel's family finally broke through her barriers, months later, she was terminated. But by then, the damage was complete. And the letters Vera had sent. Camille had not merely intercepted them. She had read them, responded to some with forged messages designed to discourage further contact, and kept the originals as insurance against future exposure. The investigator found them, Daniel said quietly, in a storage unit Camille maintained. She kept everything, including this. He handed Vera a single sheet of paper. It was her own handwriting, faded now but unmistakable. A letter she had written 6 years ago, during those desperate weeks when she first discovered her pregnancy. Dear Daniel, she read aloud, her voice catching. I know you are angry with me. I know I said things I should not have said. But something has happened that changes everything. I am pregnant. I found out last week and I have been trying to reach you ever since. Please, whatever you feel about me, about us, call me. We need to talk about this together. I still love you. Despite everything. Please come home. She could not continue. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She read this, Daniel said. Camille read this letter, knew I had a child on the way, and chose not to tell me. Vera set the paper down carefully, as if it might shatter. Why? She asked. What did she gain by keeping this from you? Control, I think. Daniel's voice was heavy with the weight of understanding. She wanted to be indispensable. If my family returned, if you returned, she would have been unnecessary. So she made sure no one could return. And when you recovered, when you were able to communicate again, she told me you had moved on, that she had heard from mutual friends you were seeing someone else, that you had made clear you wanted no contact. The magnitude of the deception settled over Vera like a physical weight. 6 years, she said. 6 years of Marisol's life. 6 years of your life. Gone because of one woman's obsession. Yes. Where is she now? Daniel shook his head. The investigator tracked her to Portugal. She married, apparently, and moved abroad. She is living a perfectly ordinary life while we sit here counting the cost of her choices. Vera stood abruptly, moving to the window. The city lights blurred through her tears. I want to be angry, she said. I want to find her and make her understand what she took from us. But I do not think I have the energy for that kind of anger anymore. Neither do I. Daniel's voice was tired. I thought finding the truth would bring closure. Instead it just brings more grief. More evidence of waste. Vera turned to face him. What do we do with this? She asked. How do we live with knowing? I think, Daniel said slowly, we live with it the same way we have been living with everything else. One day at a time. Choosing to focus on what we have instead of what we lost. It is not fair. No. It is not. They sat with that truth, the unfairness of it, the waste of it, the years that no resolution could restore. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, millions of lives intersecting and separating without awareness of the small tragedy playing out in this room. I want to tell Marisol, Vera said finally. When she is older. I want her to understand that her father was not absent by choice. That he would have been there if he had known. We will tell her together, Daniel agreed. When the time is right. When she can understand. And until then, we keep building what we have started. We keep choosing each other. We keep being the family she deserves. Vera crossed the room and sat beside him, taking his hand. I am glad you found the truth, she said. Even though it hurts. I am glad we know. So am I. They sat together in the quiet apartment, holding the evidence of betrayal and the evidence of persistence, and they chose to continue. Spring came to the city with its usual disregard for human drama. Trees bloomed, temperatures rose, and the world outside the window proceeded with its cycles regardless of what happened within. Marisol turned 7 in March. Her birthday party was small by her request, just family and a few close friends, held in Daniel's apartment because it had the best accessible space. Elena brought a cake decorated with musical notes. Daniel presented Marisol with a recording of a symphony he had conducted years ago, before his illness, before everything changed. This is the music I was making when you were born, he explained. Even though I did not know you yet, you were part of me creating this. Part of everything I was reaching for. Marisol listened to the recording with serious attention, her small face concentrated as the music swelled and retreated. It sounds like feelings, she said when it ended. Like lots of feelings happening at once. That is exactly what it is. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. That is what music does. It makes feelings audible. When I grow up, Marisol announced, I'm going to make music that sounds like our family. Happy and sad and complicated all at once. Vera and Daniel exchanged glances over their daughter's head. I think that is a beautiful goal, Vera said. The celebration continued through the afternoon. There was cake and ice cream and a game involving musical chairs that had to be modified for Daniel's wheelchair. Marisol presided over it all with the satisfaction of a queen surveying her domain. This is the best birthday, she declared as the party wound down. Because everyone I love is here. The simplicity of her statement struck Vera with unexpected force. Everyone she loved. As if it were the most natural thing in the world, this family they had assembled from fragments and second chances. After the guests left and Marisol was occupied with her presence, Daniel caught Vera's hand. I have something for you too, he said. For me. It is Marisol's birthday. And you are the person who made her possible. Who raised her, protected her, gave her the foundation that made her who she is. He pressed something into her palm. Vera looked down to find a small velvet box. "This is not," she started. "Open it." She opened it. Inside was not a ring but a key. A simple brass key on a silver chain. "I am not proposing," Daniel said quickly. "I know we are not there yet. I know we may never be there in the traditional sense. But I wanted you to have this. A key to what? To my apartment. To come and go as you choose. To this being your home as much as it is mine, whenever you want it to be." Vera looked at the key, at the man offering it, at the apartment that had become familiar over months of rebuilding. "That is a significant gesture," she said carefully. "It is meant to be." Daniel's gaze was steady. "I am not asking you to change anything about our arrangement. I am only telling you that the door is always open. That you belong here, whenever you choose to walk through it." Vera closed her fingers around the key. "I will think about it," she said. "About what it might mean. Take all the time you need." She put the chain around her neck, the key resting against her chest like a question waiting to be answered. Summer brought long evenings and slower rhythms. Marisol's school year ended, freeing her for days spent between both homes, both parents, both halves of her expanding world. Vera noticed changes in her daughter that summer. Marisol was growing, of course, getting taller and more articulate and more certain of her opinions. But there was something else, a thoughtfulness that had not been there before. A tendency to ask questions that surprised the adults around her. One evening, as they walked home from dinner at Daniel's apartment, Marisol spoke without preamble. "Mama," she said, "do you love Daddy?" Vera considered the question. Marisol had asked versions of it before, but this time there was something different in her tone. Something that suggested she was not asking for reassurance but for truth. "Yes," Vera said. "I love your daddy." "Then why do you not live together?" "Because love is complicated." Vera chose her words carefully. "Your daddy and I hurt each other a long time ago, before you were born. We are still healing from that. Living together would add pressure that we might not be ready for. But you stay at his apartment sometimes. And he stays at ours." "Yes. And that feels right for now. Maybe someday it will feel right to do more. But we are not rushing." Marisol walked in silence for a moment, processing this. "Adelaide's parents are divorced," she said finally. "Her dad has a girlfriend now, and Adelaide says it is weird because she has to call her by her first name and they are not really family." "Is that what you are worried about? That Daddy and I are not really family?" "No." Marisol shook her head firmly. "I know we are really family. I just think it is strange that we are family but we live in two different houses. Lots of families live in different configurations. What matters is not where we sleep but how we treat each other." Marisol seemed to accept this. Then, with the abrupt subject changes characteristic of childhood, she said, "Can we get ice cream? It is almost bedtime. Please. It is summer. Summer means extra ice cream. Everyone knows that." Vera laughed despite herself. "One small cone. And you eat it before we get home so the sugar has time to settle." "Deal." They detoured to the ice cream shop on the corner, the one Marisol had designated as the best in the world. As Vera watched her daughter select her flavor with the gravity of a diplomat negotiating a treaty, she thought about the question Marisol had asked. Did she love Daniel? Yes. She had admitted it in the hospital, spoken it aloud, felt it become real in the speaking. She loved him differently than she had before, without the naivety of their early relationship but with something deeper. Something that had survived misunderstanding and silence and the slow erosion of years. And the question of what came next. The key around her neck pressed gently against her chest, a constant reminder of the door that was always open. Maybe she was ready to walk through it. The decision came not in a dramatic moment but in an ordinary one. A Tuesday evening in late August, the light golden through the windows of Daniel's apartment, Marisol practicing her violin in the corner while Daniel marked up a score and Vera graded student exercises from her summer intensive. It struck her, in that unremarkable moment, that this was home. Not the apartment itself but the configuration of people within it. The sound of Marisol's halting melody mixing with the scratch of Daniel's pencil and the rustle of her own papers. The particular quality of light at this hour in this place. The sense of belonging that had grown so gradually she had not noticed it taking root. She set down her work. "I have been thinking," she said. Daniel looked up, his attention immediate and complete. About the key, Vera continued. About what it means. And what have you concluded? I think, she said slowly, I think I would like to try. Living here. With you. As a family in the traditional sense. Daniel was very still. Are you certain? He asked. I do not want you to feel pressured. I meant what I said about taking time. I have taken time. Over a year of time. And I keep arriving at the same conclusion. Which is that I do not want to split my life between two homes anymore. I do not want to say goodbye to you every night and go back to an apartment that feels increasingly empty. I want to be here. With you and Marisol. Building something permanent. Daniel set down his pencil. His eyes were bright with emotion he was not trying to hide. I want that too, he said. I have wanted it for months. I was afraid to say so because I did not want to push you towards something you were not ready for. I am ready. Then yes. The word came out like a breath released. Yes. Move in. Stay. Make this our home. Marisol had stopped playing during this exchange, her violin forgotten in her lap. Are you saying what I think you are saying? She demanded. Are we going to be a regular family now? Living in the same house? We are going to try, Vera said. If that is okay with you. If that is okay with me. Marisol's voice rose with incredulity. I have been waiting for this forever. I told Adelaide months ago that it would probably happen eventually because you look at each other the way people in movies look at each other before they kiss. Vera felt her face flush. Is that so? It is very obvious. Marisol had returned to her violin, apparently satisfied that adult matters were finally being settled appropriately. I'm glad you finally figured it out. Daniel was laughing, the sound filling the apartment with warmth. She has a point, he said. We are not subtle. Apparently not. Vera moved across the room to where he sat today. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Are we really doing this? She asked. We are really doing this. She leaned down and kissed him. It was their first kiss in over 7 years, tentative and familiar all at once, carrying the weight of everything they had survived and the hope of everything still to come. Behind them, Marisol resumed her practice, the notes of a simple melody filling the apartment like a benediction. The move happened in stages over the following weeks. Vera's apartment had to be sublet, her belongings sorted between what would come to Daniel's place and what would go into storage. Marisol's room in the new home had to be configured, her books and toys and stuffed animals arranged to her exacting specifications. Through it all, there were adjustments. Vera learned the rhythms of Daniel's medical needs, the medications and exercises and accommodations that his condition required. Daniel learned the contours of Vera's work schedule, the student emergencies and lesson preparations and performances that demanded her attention. Marisol learned that having both parents in the same house meant twice the oversight of bedtimes and homework. There were arguments. There were moments of friction when old wounds surfaced and new irritations emerged. There were nights when Vera questioned whether she had made the right choice, mornings when the reality of shared living felt more complicated than the romance of it had suggested. But there was also joy. There was breakfast together on weekday mornings, the three of them around a table too small for comfort, passing the butter and arguing about the best kind of jam. There was evening routine, Marisol's bedtime stories now read by both parents in alternating chapters. There was the simple pleasure of rolling over in the night and finding Daniel beside her, his breathing steady and warm in the darkness. Autumn arrived. Marisol began second grade at a new school closer to their shared home. Vera took on additional students, her reputation growing as a teacher who could reach children others had given up on. Daniel's health remained stable, his body finding an equilibrium that the doctors called impressive given his history. And one evening in October, as the three of them walked home from a concert at Marisol's school, something happened that Vera would remember for the rest of her life. Marisol was walking between her parents, holding both their hands, swinging their arms with the exuberance of childhood. I have decided something, she announced. What have you decided? Daniel asked. I have decided that our family is like music. How so? Because, Marisol said, her voice carrying the seriousness of a pronouncement, music is made of lots of different notes that should not work together but they do. And our family is made of lots of different pieces that should not work together but they do. Vera felt her throat tighten. That is very wise, she said. I know. Marisol accepted the compliment as her due. I am wise about many things. She continued walking, swinging their arms, apparently unaware that she had articulated something her parents had been struggling to express for over a year. Different pieces that should not work together, but they do. Vera thought about what had brought them here. The wedding where Marisol had recognized a father she had never met. The revelations that followed, each one dismantling assumptions they had held for years. The hospital room where Daniel had nearly slipped away. The slow rebuilding that had followed, day by day, choice by choice, until they had constructed something that felt, finally, like home. None of it should have worked. The odds against them had been astronomical. Two people who had hurt each other badly, separated by years and silence, and the machinations of a woman who sought to benefit from their estrangement. A child who had been raised without a father who had not known his child existed. Wounds that seemed too deep to heal. And yet here they were. Walking through an October evening, leaves crunching underfoot, the lights of the city glowing warm around them. Different pieces that should not work together, but they do. Maybe that was the secret. Maybe the working together was not despite the difference of the pieces, but because of it. Maybe the cracks were where the light got in. Winter came with its early darkness and cold winds. The apartment was warm against the season, filled with the evidence of shared living. Marisol's artwork on the refrigerator, multiplying weekly. Daniel's scores and books crowding the shelves. Vera's violin in its case by the door, ready for the day's teaching. Christmas was their first in the same home. They decorated a tree that was too large for the space, strung lights that kept falling down, wrapped presents that Marisol shook and speculated about for weeks before opening. On Christmas morning, the three of them sat surrounded by wrapping paper and new gifts and the particular exhausted joy that follows the holidays build-up. This is the best Christmas, Marisol announced, unknowingly echoing her birthday declaration from months before. You said that last year too, Vera pointed out. Last year was also the best Christmas. Marisol was patient with her mother's lack of understanding. Every year gets to be the best Christmas because every year is different. That is remarkably philosophical. I do not know what that means, but I will assume it is a compliment. Daniel laughed, pulling Marisol close for a hug. It is definitely a compliment, he said. You are the wisest person I know. Marisol accepted this as her due and returned to examining her presents. Later, after Marisol had gone to bed with her new stuffed animal and her new books and the satisfied exhaustion of a child who has been thoroughly celebrated, Vera and Daniel sat together by the tree. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. For what? For this. He gestured broadly at the room, the tree, the remnants of the day. For giving me a family I did not know I could have. For trusting me with something so precious. You earned it. Did I? Sometimes I wonder. Sometimes I think about everything I missed, everything I could have been there for but was not, and I feel like I am still making up for lost time. Vera took his hand. You will always be making up for lost time, she said. That is not something that ends. But you are here now. You have been here for almost 2 years. Every day you show up, every moment you are present, that is what matters. I am afraid, Daniel admitted, of my health. Of running out of time before I have given her enough. Given you enough. We never have enough time. That is the nature of time. But we use what we have. Is it enough? Vera looked at him. At the man she had married young and divorced angry and found again against all odds. At the lines in his face that told of pain and persistence. At the silver in his hair that she had grown to love. At the life they had built from pieces that should not have fit. It is enough, she said. Whatever comes. It is enough. Spring brought Marisol's end-of-year recital. She had been working on a piece for months, something ambitious for her level, something that required all her concentration and practice and the stubborn determination she had inherited from both parents. The night of the performance, the school auditorium was packed with families. Vera and Daniel sat in the front row, his wheelchair positioned at the aisle end where he had clear sightlines. Marisol's teacher had arranged for her to perform near the end of the program, a position of honor for the school's most promising young musician. When it was her turn, Marisol walked onto the stage with the confidence of someone who knows exactly who she is. She positioned her violin, glanced at her parents, and began to play. The piece was technically demanding, with runs and shifts that would challenge players twice her age. Marisol played it with the careful precision of long practice and something more. Expression. Feeling. The particular quality that separated musicians from people who simply played notes. When she finished, the audience erupted. Not the polite applause of parents dutifully supporting their children, but genuine appreciation for something remarkable. Marisol took her bow, then another, her face glowing with the satisfaction of work well done. And as she walked off stage to join her parents, Vera saw in her daughter's face the reflection of everything they had built together. "You were magnificent," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know," Marisol replied, but without arrogance. "I worked very hard. That work showed. Can we get ice cream? To celebrate?" Vera laughed, wiping her eyes. "Yes. We can get ice cream." They walked out of the auditorium together, the three of them, into a spring evening soft with a promise of warmth to come. The ice cream shop on the corner had a line, other families with the same idea, but they waited together without complaint. "Mama," Marisol said as they waited. "Remember when you told me that our family was different pieces that worked together?" "You told me that," Vera corrected. "On the walk home from your school concert." "Oh right. I am very wise." Marisol nodded. "But what I meant to say is, I think we are like music." "You said that too." "I know, but I mean something different now. I mean that music is not just notes. It is the space between the notes. The silence that makes the sound mean something. And our family is like that. We have lots of silence, years of it from before I knew Daddy. But the silence is part of what makes us. Not just the parts where we are together, but the parts where we were apart." Vera stared at her daughter. Beside her, Daniel was equally still. "Where did you learn that?" Daniel asked. "From my violin teacher. She says silence is as important as sound. And I think that is true about us. The silence was not nothing. It was part of our song." Vera felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. "That is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard," she said. Marisol shrugged, embarrassed now by the attention. "I just thought of it," she said. "Can I get chocolate and strawberry together?" The line moved forward. They ordered their ice cream and found a bench outside where they could sit together as the evening deepened around them. And Vera thought about what her daughter had said. The silence as part of the song. The space between the notes giving meaning to the sound. They had been apart for years. Those years were not nothing. They were the rest that made the music possible. The breath before the phrase. The pause that gave weight to what came after. And what came after was this. A family on a spring evening, sharing ice cream, watching the light fade. A mother and father and daughter, different pieces that somehow fit together. A song that had taken years to compose but was finally, fully being played. It was not the ending Vera had imagined when she was young. It was not the life she had planned. It was better. Because it was real. Because it was earned. Because every note of it had been chosen, practiced, perfected through repetition and effort and the stubborn refusal to give up. Marisol finished her ice cream and stood, ready to move on to the next thing. "Can we go home now?" she asked. "I want to play my piece for Stravinsky." He did not get to hear it. "The cat is not going to appreciate your musical genius," Daniel pointed out. "He might. He is very sophisticated for a cat." They walked home together through streets that had become familiar, past landmarks that held memories now, toward an apartment that was no longer just Daniel's or Vera's but theirs. At the door, Marisol ran ahead, eager to share her triumph with a feline who would almost certainly not care. Daniel paused before following, turning to Vera. "Are you happy?" he asked. She considered the question. Happiness was not something she had pursued directly. It had always seemed like a byproduct of other things, fleeting and unreliable. But looking at her life now, at the family they had built, at the home they shared, at the future that stretched before them uncertain but full of promise, she could only give one honest answer. "Yes," she said. "I am happy." "Good." Daniel smiled. "So am I." He went inside. Vera lingered for a moment on the threshold, listening to the sounds of home. Marisol's voice describing her performance to an unimpressed cat. Daniel's laughter at something she had said. The clatter of normalcy, of family, of life continuing. Then she stepped through the door, into the warmth, into the light, into the life she had never expected but could no longer imagine living without. And somewhere, in the space between the notes, the music played on. This concludes our story. If it has touched your heart, if you found yourself in Vera's journey or Daniel's redemption or Marisol's wisdom, then please take a moment to like and subscribe. These stories are made with love for listeners like you, women who understand that life does not always follow our plans but that beauty can emerge from the most unexpected places. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until our next story, this is Tales of Desire with Mr. Walker, reminding you that it is never too late for healing, never too late for love, and never too late to become the family you were always meant to be.